Hello, good evening, and welcome to Thornton.com. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the show. It is a pleasure to be with you, as always, and as always, it's a pleasure to have the wonderful journalist and Sputnik commentator, James Tweedy, with us. Good evening, James. How the devil are we?
I'm good, thanks, Warren. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Always much happier for seeing you. Let's get straight into it because we've got a hell of a lot that we're going to talk about because there is so much that's been going on and we need to dissect it because there is, how can I put this? There's a lot of talk from various people about various things. And of course, we have to dissect every single part of that. James, I just want to get your idea on today's, or I should say now, yesterday's meeting between Starmer, Macron, and of course Zelensky is doing the rounds. He's met with the Pope. He's met with everybody else, and yet this seems an absolutely foolish errand. I mean, he met with Merz, Starmer, and Macron. Then he went and met with Maloney. Then he met with, and of course he met with Ursula von der Leyen. He met the Pope while he was there. He met with Ursula von der Leyen and Mark Rutte. It's the begging bowl out again, or is this something different?
He often does this at a time when, when he's under pressure to make peace. I mean, this has happened before this year,
Yes.
And yeah, then he goes, it probably serves a few different purposes. One is to try and divide the European members of NATO from the USA now that the USA the government that ostensibly wants to make peace, and another is to tell everyone at home, to make it look like it's for optics, it's for propaganda. You're going to say, well, all our European allies are with us, blah blah blah. And the other one is probably, like you say, putting the hand out for money or arms or something. So, and it's always the pattern. He spends about as much time out of Ukraine as in it. You see, and that's probably deliberate, and it's probably a self-preservation strategy on Zelensky's part.
Yeah.
He might think that either someone might try a coup against him in Ukraine if he's not careful. If he annoys the wrong people, or his office might get hit by a missile one day. So better to be out of the country as often as possible.
Well, we have a bit of a problem, James, because not even Larry the cat likes him. Have a look at this.
Okay.
Nope.
Mr. Starmer, will you promise Ukraine won't get
and of course, being welcomed by Starmer. He's becoming a pariah elsewhere. But von der Leyen and, shall we say, the EU seem to want to be his mates. We've talked a lot over the last couple of days about this nonsensical, idiotic grab for the Russian frozen assets. And we've laid it on the line how, look, this will finish Euroclear. It will bankrupt Euroclear completely.
Yeah.
caused Belgium to have a bit of a wobble in the market. Um, this can only hurt the EU. Everybody, including the Saudi Arabians and everybody, is saying they're going to pull their money out. And now we've got Starmer turning around saying, well, we've got about 20 billion of frozen Russian assets, saying that he's going to change the law so that they can be accessed. But as far as I can see so far, James, when we spoke to the guy in the city, our guy in the city said that the amount that the Ukrainians get from that 300 odd billion is only 1.5 billion in interest. Now they've loaned them a hell of a lot more than that, saying they've got it out the interest. They've been dipping into
Right.
the principal outside Euroclear, haven't they?
I don't know what exactly they've been doing. They may have been borrowing money against it. They may have
Yeah.
been printing money, basically, or not even printing it. If they printed, I always say nowadays, if they printed $1 trillion or something, or €1 trillion, I'd be impressed, because
Yeah.
that's a lot of printing. But,
Yeah.
they probably, it's numbers on a computer,
Yes.
And so they've invented money, or they've borrowed money against that on the basis that they will be able to seize it at some point, which is not necessarily the case.
No.
There's lots of reasons why they can't.
Yes.
Or they won't, or they might not be able to, because one is that Russia has frozen a similar amount of Western assets in Russia. The Russian government has frozen it.
Yes.
And that's being held hostage against this. You see, so that wealth is being held hostage against the wealth that's being held in the US and the EU and so on in Britain.
Yeah.
I don't know what Starmer's talking about 20 billion. I mean, they grabbed a few houses and yachts that belong
They
to
did,
Russian
yes.
businessmen who like to live in the UK, right?
Yes.
And they're not, obviously those are not government figures, and they're not possibly not really supporters of the government or anything like that, So those things were grabbed back in 2022. But what are they worth? I mean, especially a second-hand yacht is probably like a second-hand car. It's probably not as worth as much as it was when it was built. So I don't know where he's getting, where he gets all these ideas from. But the thing is that the British economy is very much like, as we're describing the Belgian economy, that a huge amount of the nominal GDP, gross domestic product,
Yeah.
or the just general wealth of Britain, comes from the City of London. It comes from the banking sector, and doing things like keeping other countries' gold bullion for them in the Bank of England.
Yes.
And with all the questions around that about whether it's still there,
Yeah, exactly.
is it even still there, and which other countries have done. Venezuela did, and then there was a problem for them,
Yeah.
and then, so, and just the general trading in the City of London, which doesn't really employ very many people, and it doesn't feed money into the economy particularly, but it looks great on the books, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
The Russian gold reserves, yes.
I mean, they've got 42% of their currencies backed by their gold reserves, which just surpassed 300 billion for the first time in modern history. Let's hope it's not in Euroclear, right?
No. Well, I don't know. Euroclear. I don't know. Does Euroclear handle physical assets at all?
No,
I mean,
it doesn't. I was just being
right, exactly.
I
So
was just being
I
facetious.
think it was money that was owed to the Gazprom company for gas exports to the EU.
Yes.
That ran through various different pipelines, including some that go through Ukraine or went through Ukraine, and it was, and that trade has stopped now, but they've held on to that money.
Yeah.
It's okay. So it's obviously it's a problem. Those kind of banks. It's like the Swiss banks. They it's a special, Euroclear is a special bank that deals with international trade payments.
It
Generally
does.
large payments, right?
Yeah, very
And
large payments.
yeah, extremely large in that case. 300
Yeah.
billion or whatever it is, 200 billion euros or US dollars, and I mean, basically that kind of thing works on the basis that you don't turn anyone away. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't say I'm not going to do business with you because I don't like your politics or the ethics of your company or something like that. You know, it's like the Swiss banks. You know, ask no, you know, ask me no questions and I'll tell you
I'll
no
tell you no
lies.
lies. Yeah, exactly
Right?
that.
And so they're just, you know, that's how it needs to work. You know, take anybody's money and not mess around about it, not quibble about it. And once you stop doing that, there's all sorts of countries that say, well, you know, in your country or in the EU, in some of the countries of the EU, we get criticised for this and that. You know, they say we're abusing people's human rights, or we're, you know, we've got migrant workers who we're treating as slaves. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about wealthy countries that sell a lot of oil to the
Yes.
European Union countries. And they might say, well, we're not going to use you anymore because at any point they could, you know, it could become politicized and you could steal our money like you did with the Russians or freeze it, you know.
Yeah. So that causes a huge problem, doesn't it?
They'll
That's the
use a
thing.
different service. They'll make their own one or something. If there isn't
Yeah.
another one, they'll make their own one, you see.
Yeah.
And then, you know, those
Considering
transactions
considering
have
how
gone.
considering how much Euroclear actually make from these transactions, which is considerable, James. The Belgians, for you, I'm going to ask you one more question on this before we move on to the situation on the front line. My thoughts on this, and from what I'm hearing from our sources, is that they've been dipping into the principle, not the stuff money in Euroclear, but they don't have the money to continue this war without going into huge financial debt, without taking the money from the Russian assets. In other words, they've gone to the well is dry, and now they want to go to the Russian well. Did for you the Belgians arresting, obviously, Callis's predecessor and arresting these three people in Brussels? Was this Euroclear and the Belgian government going packing, pressuring us to hand over the money, or do you think that's separate?
It could be something like that. It's very strange. I mean, Federica Mogherini she was a commissioner years ago,
Yes.
you know, actually in the last decade, back in the 2010s. And she
Sounds
was
like something you'd order in an Italian restaurant, doesn't it?
yes, Moggers, I call her. But anyway, she was the commission. She got given the job on the commission of being the commissioner for foreign relations, like you say, like Kaya Kallas is, and before her it was Josep Borrell.
Borrell, Jungle
And
Joe.
she was on the commission at the time of the Brexit referendum in Britain and a lot of the negotiations around that, but or the early negotiations. But and now she was lecturing at the College of Europe. You know, it sounds like the Council of Europe. You know, the
Yes,
Council of
exactly.
Europe.
One of those nice jobs you get after they put you out to pasture.
I don't know, but she quit. She resigned from that after the arrest. I mean, I don't think she's on remand, but she resigned from that job because of the publicity, the bad press she got, basically bad press.
Yes.
So, but I don't know what she's done because she hasn't been directly involved. She hasn't been on the commission for years. So, if she's done something, it predates. She was there in the period after the Maidan Square coup.
She was.
Right. So that was important. And then and it was also during the time of the third Greek banking bailout.
It was.
You know, which was actually not a bailout. It was just forcing the Greek government to cut spending and privatize a lot of national assets.
Twist their arm up their back. Yeah.
So she was there. Right. She was there at that kind of time. Yeah. And but I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to tell unless they release something. It's hard to tell what she might have done, because there's all sorts of things she might have done. There's a lot of money that flows through the coffers of the EU. It's not a state, you know. It doesn't have a proper government, but the Commission is kind of like a government, and the European Parliament is its parliament, its legislative body, and so on. And there's all sorts of, you know, there isn't really any accountability. Very few people vote in the elections to the European Parliament, and the Commission is all appointed. And they you know, they embezzle money. Yeah, that happens, you know. Or they misuse, you know, they make spurious expenses claims and things like that, or they employ their relative, you know, MEPs employ their relatives as their assistants, and so on the taxpayers, at the taxpayers' expense. And so there's all sorts of stuff like that. So it's very hard to tell what it's about, you know. But like you say, it could be them trying to put a shot across the bows. But if I was going to do that, I'd have arrested somebody who's actually on the Commission right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've got another question for you then, James. This storm shadow, I mean, there's, I don't know, it's not hitting the mainstream media yet, but we had, you know how Russia liked to strike various areas that are doing drones and everything else. And there was a couple of days ago, they hit a factory that had a storm shadow missile, and they were basically saying that they'd found this area, they'd hit the Storm Shadow missile, and of course they'd done it because they were, as far as they were concerned, they were getting ready to launch it. I'm just wondering, James, just before we go to this situation, just wondering if this is anything to do with it. It does seem rather strange. This is from the Ministry of Defence in the UK. It is with deep regret we must announce that a member of the UK Armed Forces died in Ukraine this morning, Tuesday, 9th of December. He was injured in a tragic accident whilst observing Ukraine forces test a new defensive capability away from the front line. The family has been notified, and our thoughts are with them at this sad and difficult time. Firstly, I'd like to ask what the hell he was doing in Ukraine. And secondly, do you think it's anything to do with the Storm Shadow missile that was blown up along with the Ukrainians in that area?
Well, let's have a look. They launched those Storm Shadows from aircraft. I mean, that's my understanding of it anyway. Yes. It could be that he was watching them firing one of those Flamingo missiles, but then maybe those things don't exist really.
Yeah. Would it have anything to do with the fact that an Su-27 was brought down by a Russian missile whilst trying to fire, whilst it was lining up a fire mission in Kharkiv? And of course, the Russian jet brought this Ukrainian jet down.
Well,
British pilot, possibly?
No.
Okay.
Basically, he would have to have converted and trained to fly that aircraft.
Do you put that out? I know it takes a couple of years to do that, but would you put that out of the realms of possibility?
Not really, because they probably had as many pilots as aircraft at the start of the war, and they haven't received any more. They haven't been given any more of those Su-27s.
Yeah,
and there were pilots who were, had left the Air Force that came back. Apparently, at least according to media reports back in the early days, they were all both. One of the things that they used to say. So I don't know about that. It's a question whether he was in a facility that was a target and that was bombed, basically, and was killed by the Russians. And then, if that's the official story, then they're trying to avoid accusing the Russians. Basically, it could have been the other way around. He could have died in an accident, and they could say it was the Russians who killed him as a way of ramping up tensions. But
you mean like the one on the border when they were having training exercise and 4 people mysteriously drowned?
Yeah, I mean, you asked the question of what he's doing there. I don't think he was flying an aeroplane.
No.
But what exactly
What's his
is
role?
the British Army doing, or British Armed Forces? What exactly are they doing there? There
Yes.
was lots of accusations in some alternative media that, for instance, they're training the Ukrainians for all sorts of dodgy operations,
Yes.
some of which sort of amount to terrorism, and things like that.
Yeah.
Also, these weird things they do where they try and land some guys in a speedboat on part of the Crimea and hoist the
Yes.
flag and take a photo and run away again. And often they get caught though and they get killed. So there's it raises more questions than answers. What was the thing
There are questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. By the way, the Storm Shadows, what they say they were launching them from was Sukhoi 24s, which is a different aircraft.
Yes.
It's a bigger aircraft. Su 24s, it's an older aircraft. And
those are the three main stories that are coming out, though, James. One, that he died in a training accident. One, that he was actually a pilot. And two, three, sorry, that he was literally there helping ready a Storm Shadow when the place got hit.
Could be like loading it onto the aircraft.
So as we get to know more, but I thought I'd ask to see if you had any more. We're still waiting.
It's very no, it's a difficult one. It's like what you see on the page is all the information that you've got,
and that's all you're going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's an
odd one, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And his family probably are not going to get answers. That's the tragic thing. They're not going to know why he died.
No, he will have died, as everybody dies in Ukraine, saving another soldier, bravely dragging him away from an attack. That's the official line of the Ukrainians. Your son died a hero, trying to drag another human being to safety.
I don't know. They're gonna. Yeah, there's something
crazy.
Testing. That's what I'm interested in. What were they supposedly testing?
Yes.
There we go. Is the British government trying to thinking about buying some of these designs, because they've got a couple of they've got a short range ballistic missile and that cruise missile called the Neptune. Some people say they developed them from older missiles. But is the British government trying to buy the designs to those and then produce them here? There's a question.
It is. Let's get into this then. Let's start going through the front line, because what we've had is we've had a bit of a laugh, actually. I don't know about you. I sort of roared uproariously when I saw this from the BBC. This is from Jonathan Beale, the BBC. The flag shows. Very simply, this is the raising of the Ukrainian flag, showing that Pokrovsk is not under Russian control. Should we get into that? Because Jonathan's a little bit previous. Jonathan didn't do his homework. Jonathan, shall we have a little look and see where they were? They were actually in Minorad, Jonathan. Shall we have a look and see what happened to them? This is the group of people that were raising a flag in the building, as you can see the building in the background there. And very simply, once they found they were being targeted, they decided they were all going to leg it. Once they'd raised the flag, James, off they went, the little group. And we're about to see exactly what happened to them. So, Jonathan, you've got it a bit wrong here. Yes, they did go they are in Minorad, and of course, Minorad pocket is getting smaller and smaller. But once they'd raised the flag, took the picture, they realised they were being looked at by a drone and decided to leg it into this building. Okay, let's wait for everybody to get inside. As you can see, or you might be able to make out the people actually running away from knowing that the drone has spotted them into a building that they thought was completely safe. And there we are. In the same way as it always does when you go flag raising, James Tweedy.
Okay, I mean Miragrad or Dimitrov, the Russians call it that.
Yes.
I mean, the situation that this is another place where they're kind of in denial, you know, that they're holding out, you know, but they are surrounded. You know, first they weren't really surrounded. There was still a narrow way out, and then
Here
now
we
they
are,
are
James.
surrounded, but they're not surrendering. But it's only a matter of time. If there's any kind of fighting, they're going to run out of ammunition very quickly.
Yes.
And there is fighting. I think that
Yeah.
you know the Russian army is advancing in from the south. So, yeah, they're stuck, and I don't know. There might be only be a couple of hundred of them or something like that. There's rumors that the social media is full of rumors, and that's what I mean. You can't take them as anything more than that. But you know, there was talk going around that they were going to try and break out and escape, but I don't know if that's happened at all.
No, they tried in a few vehicles.
Yeah, they might all end up surrendering, you know.
Yes.
But while they're there, they're being told to do things like that.
Well, somewhere where it's gone terribly wrong, where they have tried to make inroads back, and to be fair, they have captured a few streets and a district is in Kupiansk, but they've been taking horrific losses here, James Tweedy. The Ukrainians have taken people back from the front line elsewhere, and we'll have a look at that in a minute, but they've taken them from the front line elsewhere and thrown them at Kupiansk to try and rescue the situation. Because, of course, then they can move up the big guns, which have a 60-kilometre spread, which brings Kharkiv into sharp, shall we say, focus. And, of course, they've been taking horrendous losses trying to recover the districts that they've lost.
Well, I mean, yeah, again, if this map is accurate, then why are they attacking along those lines, you know?
Yeah.
Into the urban area, which the Russians now control, because that's going to be difficult.
Yes.
You know, and maybe it's to try and open up the bridge and evacuate the troops that they left on the other side of the river, because there's a river that runs north and south through.
There is, yeah, the Oskol River, which is this going down the middle, and of course they're saying that in this pocket here, which we'll show in sharp relief in a short while, in that pocket there, they're saying there's over 1,500 troops in there. The problem that we have with this, of course, is once again it's the fog of war. But what we have from our people is that that the figures are quite right, and there's about 300 left. Julio, have a little look at this. This is in Juliopol, or Guliopol, as some people call it. But they are literally picking off bits and pieces as they go through. I'm going to play a little video for you in a second, James. I mean, this is the Russians are inside Juliopol now, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I am going to play the latest update that we have, of course. And as I say, this is a sit rep from the front line. So, of course, this is Russian loaded. This is a Russian sit rep. But we will go through the map very, very shortly.
From December 6th to 8th, there were reports of increased activity along several sections of the front. Russian troops had some success east of Kupiansk. On December 7th, advance units approached Petropavlovka. This settlement is an important Ukrainian defense hub in the area. Later that day, Petropavlovka was attacked from the south. The Ukrainian troops east of the village were almost surrounded. The situation around Seversk changed dramatically. On December 6th, Russian assault groups broke through Ukrainian defenses east of the city. The advance units secured their positions on the city's outskirts, and fighting continued in the Energetikov Street area. A supporting strike was also launched from the south. By December 8th, the city's defenses had collapsed. Russian flags were spotted on City School Number 1, which is located in the city center to the west of the railway station. Currently, the river in the western part of the city is the last natural line of defense. Due to the limited Ukrainian reserves in this area, the city can be considered lost. The encirclement of the Ukrainian garrison in Myrnograd continues to tighten. On December 7th, the Russian army expanded its zone of control significantly to the west and south of the city. The situation for the Ukrainian units under siege is deteriorating with each passing day. They are mainly supplied by air using large Baba Yaga drones. There have also been attempts to deliver provisions and ammunition via ground-based robotic platforms. However, given the density of the encirclement, these attempts have been unsuccessful. The Russian army, for its part, is in no hurry to storm the encircled city. The Ukrainian troops' main reserves have been transferred to the south, so there is no threat of a debilitating strike. An intensive offensive under these conditions would result in unjustified losses, which is not in the interests of the Russian command. Active hostilities have resumed in the Guliapol area. Russian troops have encircled the city from the north and are approaching the Gacha River. On December 7th, Russian units entered Guliapol from the east, and fighting continues on the city's outskirts. Because Ukrainian reserves have been transferred here from other sections of the front, the assault on the city may take considerable time. The situation for Ukrainian troops on key sections of the front is negative. Concentrating reserves in the southern sector has had an extremely harmful impact on other equally important fronts. The collapse of Seversk defenses is precisely the result of the lack of reserves in this area. If the current dynamics continue, Lyman and a large bridgehead on the left bank of the Oskol River may also be abandoned.
So there we are, James. That is the sort of update that they have for us. But we're going to get into this now, because this is the thing that is sort of getting everybody. And if you've seen the main title of our program today, this is it. It's what is happening in Seversk. So without further ado, James, let's get into what's going on there, because, of course, this is the map of Seversk, and it's our usual map with our grateful thanks to AMK Mapping. The map that we have here shows that they are well inside Seversk, that they're retreating left, right, and centre. And Seversk, of course, we'll just zoom out a little bit if we can. Sometimes my mouse plays up. The yellow parts are significant because that's where the Russians are taking over, and we'll go through that in a minute. And of course, there is some in Lyman as well. All around the area of Seversk, it seems as though they are moving in. Why is Seversk so important? It's right on the border of the Luhansk, or right on the border of Luhansk, Donetsk. It's obviously in northern, the northern part of the Donbass. Is it because I'm just showing here? Is this massively so they can cut across the top for Kramatorsk and of course Slovyansk? Is this the main reason?
Well, Seversk is where the Russian advance kind of stopped. It's back in 2022.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to break through for 3 years. And now suddenly it's falling apart, possibly because on that map they've come around behind. They've cut off that road there, but behind. And so it's significant like that. What was basically a place where the Russians couldn't break through, now they're breaking through. And then the next big town is Slavyansk over there, Slavyansk, and then Kramatorsk. And then those two are the last bits of Donetsk region that are controlled by the Ukrainian army.
Yes,
the last big cities there. And then once they capture those, then the rest is kind of over. You see, so it's very significant, and it means that this big strong point in the Ukrainian line that was like Ugledar in the south is now falling apart. It's crumbling. They've lost that, and kind of there's a question of whether they're going to be able to stabilize things, whether they can fall back and make another defensive line further back, or whether it's over. Basically, they can't stop it now.
They now have. Since they've taken Zakitry, they're on the outskirts of that, and they're in Dubrova. They very much cut off the line, as you say, of that supply road. and of course, it's only going to get worse, as they say. The problem is, isn't it, that this is slowly falling apart, as they say. We've got further down, they're making inroads here as well for this main supply road as well that would normally be part of it, as you can see. That would normally, this is the only supply road they have in now, and they've broken this off. They've also taken, from what we understand, troops from this area to go to Kupiansk, which of course they've made a few inroads in and have taken huge casualties. Does these two things have a factor on what's happening suddenly in Seversk?
I think they've just generally got a problem keeping all the units at full strength and keeping them, you know, and having enough troops on any one part of the front line to hold it. You see, you know, if things start going wrong somewhere else, then troops are going to have to be diverted there, and it's going to weaken another sector. That's the problem. The front is very, very long.
It is
possibly almost like, yeah, more than 1,000 miles or something like that.
Yeah,
and that's obviously very difficult to defend along, especially now that the Russian forces fighting in Ukraine outnumber the Ukrainian ones, quite possibly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then what they were saying about the south there, Gulai Pole, again, that was a place that was, you know, like a major strong point on the front line, or the front line just runs south of it. And, you know, there was no threat to it for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, 3 years. And now that's going to fall, and they're already other troops are already approaching Orikov, which is where your mouse is there, actually.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, Orikov.
Yeah. Okay. Now that used to be back in the day when they were launching their counter-offensive. If you remember, Robertinho is just below it.
Yeah.
They were meant to make their way to Tokmak and then on to Mariupol, the Sea of Azov, and then into Crimea. And that was very much Orkiv was very much one of their big key launching points. Robertinho, of course, has long since disappeared into the dust, and Orkiv is now, and of course that's a hub as well. And a lot of them, you know, they'll be talking a lot about. You know, it's not important or anything else, but Orkiv was a major hub as well, James.
Exactly. And then the next big town up the road, there's a city. There's the city of Zaporozhye.
Yeah.
You see, so these are all things that, let's say the Russians capture another large city like Zaporozhye there, or Kharkov, or Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, smaller cities, but that's a huge political defeat for Volodymyr Zelensky. You know, that's when he's, you know, people in his government are gonna start calling for him to resign and things like that, because, you know, he's lost the war.
I mean, here we go, James. I mean, obviously Pavlograd is really now. Just letting you know that just around about here is the final mass of trench lines or trench networks that stretch along there, James. They pretty much are around about here at Dobrofilia. Once they get past this, the trench lines are sort of right the way along there. After that, it's not too difficult to get to Pavlograd.
Well, the other problem for the Ukrainians is that if the Russians just reach the outskirts of Zaporozhye, they're cutting off some roads there that are being used to supply the front line. And if they go north and they cut off more roads up by Dnipropetrovsk, and so forth, then, you know, they keep going through that country where the defensive lines are not very thick, and there aren't a lot, you know, troops would have to be redeployed. They'd have to, you know, like be pulled back from the front line to that. They're going to start cutting off the whole huge front line, this huge concentration around Pokrovsk, you know, and Slavyansk and Kramatorsk and all these places, Konstantinovka and so forth. those
Yeah.
areas are going to lose their line of supply and their line of retreat.
Yes.
And there's a huge number of units concentrated there, loads of
Yes.
troops concentrated in that small area, fighting this very, as fierce as it gets in this war. But
Yes, and as you can see by the yellow, James, I mean, the Russians are having quite a bit of success in there.
yes. So
Now, I did
if
want
they
to ask.
cut off that, all that collapses, and then possibly you've got half the Ukrainian army stuck, trapped, or something, or having to make a very rapid retreat, and that's going to mean losing lots of equipment, taking casualties and losing equipment in the retreat as the drones come after them or whatever.
Where do they go, James? Your best guess. Do they then make for Pavlorad? Because Izium would be the next logical target, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Izium is a place that the Russians worked very hard to capture, fought very hard to capture at the start of the war, and then they lost it again. And of course, the point of it was that it was going to, from Izium, they could go south and take Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. But the basic problem if that front line, I mean, it's already happening in the south. That front line in the south is collapsing and it's speeding up, right?
It is. Yeah.
And if it keeps going, they're going to have to all retreat back to the river, to the Dnipro River, where Dnipro is and Zaporozhye is.
Which is this river here. For all of those of you watching, this is the Dnipro River. I want to ask you a question about that, James. And of course, a symbolic, absolute disaster would be if they take Zelensky's hometown of Kryvyi Rog, wouldn't it?
Well, there's some possibility of that happening if they can. It seems if they're going to advance up to Zaporozhye, then there's no point fighting over the city and leaving the supply line to it open behind those roads open to the west there, to the left of the picture. Open for the Russian army to keep supplying them. So they're going to make some attempt to cross the river and get in behind it. That would be the way to do it.
Yes.
And they might do it all the way down in Kherson, or they might do it just there,
Yeah.
But then they've got a bridge. I mean, that's the point. They want to get a bridgehead, and then they could go to Kryvyi Rog, and they could definitely go to Kherson, and maybe all the way to Odessa.
I mean, this would make sense, wouldn't it? Heading for Kryvyi Rog, because this would send shockwaves through Kaminsky, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, and even Mykolaiv, and start the French panicking that they were maybe going to head to Odessa. Kryvyi Rog seems like I mean, certainly if I was a military analyst here, I'd say that would be a brilliant place to capture, whether you could hold it. But of course, then you're in behind, because they're going to, as it stands at the moment, Ukraine not giving up any land. The Russians, when they get there, are going to cross the Dnieper, aren't they?
Well, like I said, they would probably want to try and get across the river somewhere else than in the city and get in behind it and cut it off.
Yeah.
But they might have to fight their way through the city. They'd probably rather not have to do that. But if they do get across the river, that's a huge political disaster.
It is.
For the Ukrainians. I mean, either they've got to send an inordinate number of troops there, like they have done in Donetsk region, around Pokrovsk and places like that. Huge numbers of troops there to stop the Russians from advancing, breaking out from that bridgehead.
Do you still see it?
Or they're going to lose more places, but it's just going to be a huge. It's like, I don't know. Now the Russians are on the west bank of the river. Then it's over, isn't it? People are going to start panicking. They're going to break out. They're going to go north. They're going to march all the way up to Kiev. They're going to march to Odessa.
I have a question for you. I mean, the E50 road is obviously a very, very important road. We know that it serviced many, many areas. Is your next best guess Pavlorad? Would that be where the Russians would aim for, do you think?
Yeah, or they would just go that one there that runs alongside the river, the E105.
Yes.
And then cut it like that, you see.
Yeah.
If they were outside Zaporozhye, they could just go up that, they could keep going up that road as
Yes.
The Ukrainians won't just sit there and let them do it. But
No.
you're either going
But
to force
they'll
Ukraine to divert huge numbers of troops there, large numbers of
into that
troops there to
area.
stop it, or they've got to let you do that and collapse the whole front line. And that means that all the army on the east side of the river has got to retreat back to the river, and then that means things like losing the city of Kharkov, and that's the second biggest city in Ukraine. It's another political disaster, and then Zelensky is, again being told to resign by his own party or something like that. That's what would happen probably.
Yeah.
And maybe even forced out of power in a coup.
Okay.
All
I
these
would
things,
ask.
all these things are going to cause, and it's going to cause a huge crisis of confidence in the NATO countries as well. You see.
Yeah. I've got another question then for you, James. Because I don't believe after the recent spate of tanker attacks, I think they played right into Russian hands, and Russia now have a perfectly legitimate excuse to take Odessa. If they're going to do it, Kherson first of all, that's going to be if you go and take Kherson, that's going to be difficult to defend, isn't it? As everybody is finding out.
Well, it depends. Again, it's always all about how large a force the Ukrainians can send there to fight them.
Yeah.
And there are some suggestions that, I mean, again, it's speculation, it's rumor and things like that, that there aren't actually that many troops around the city of Kherson there.
Yeah.
Because they're relying on the river to stop the Russians. You see.
Yeah. Do they at any point, because obviously they've got masses of troops in Mykolaiv, do they at any point attempt to river crossing, say here, to sort of capture this area? I know it would to go up towards Mykolaiv and then threaten Odessa. Is that? I mean, that seems to me as though that's a bridge too far at the moment. Would you think they would be planning anything like that?
Well, it's a not bridge too far, isn't it? Because there's no bridge there. You want to have a road bridge so that you can just drive trucks over it. I mean, that was why they evacuated Kherson, because the Ukrainians used those HIMARS rocket launchers they got from the US to attack the bridge. They didn't necessarily destroy the bridge, but they made it difficult to use the bridge. But I don't know if they're still in a position to do that anymore. Like I say, troops are concentrated over there by Pokrovsk and places like that. They're concentrated in Donetsk. They've probably lost quite a lot of those rocket launchers.
They had the MLRS.
Yeah, and they're probably, and the artillery that they started the war with, they've lost.
Yes,
a lot. A lot of that is visually confirmed by sites that do that. And so,
Constantinivka, they're only taking a little. They seem to be not too bothered about getting that done. But certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, when we go up around Siversk, certainly, should we say, Lyman is an area they would want to capture, isn't it?
They're very close to it, and they might well do. That's on the way down to Slavyansk. So, I mean, Konstantinovka, that could, once they've cleared out Mirnograd, the Russian army is going to start advancing north, and that's to the west of there. So they're going to sort of create more problems for the Ukrainian forces in Konstantinovka. Yeah, and then again, it's going to turn into another pocket, or they're going to have to withdraw to get out of there. They're going to have to retreat. And where do they retreat to? It's not enough to go into the cities of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk and try and say, right, we're going to
because they're going to be under
warfare.
They're going to be hit.
Cut off. They could get cut off. They could get trapped there. They've got to get. What are they going to do? Are they going to go up to Kursk and Kharkov? Sorry, not Kursk, Kharkov, and they're going to sit in Kharkov and try and defend that? It's the same problem, you know.
But that leaves the whole of the south open, then, doesn't it? If they do that. Sorry, mouse is playing up here. Let's see if I can just zoom out.
Yeah,
There
they've
we
got
are.
all these. They've got all these problems. Where are you going to make a coherent front line?
Yes.
That's got some natural defensive features like rivers or something, you know.
Yeah, I would have thought if you're going to do it, you're going to do it from Poltava all the way down to Kavoy Rog. I would have thought.
You know, they got then that means you sort of abandon Dnipro. Well, I just don't. Dnipro, I think, is on the most of the city is on the western bank there, but you know,
Yeah,
you kind of you have to sort of abandon other places, and then you're losing lots of territory, and then the Russians are saying, well, look, you know, it's no longer this pretense that you're okay. We're not going to withdraw. You know, this is what Zelensky says. We're not going to withdraw from Donetsk. And that the Russians
they have to make a line of defense, don't they, James? Because at the moment, what they're doing is they're just throwing troops in to be annihilated instead of, say, making a barrier between Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kavoy Rog, Dnipro, Poltava. That's sort of like a hook, a massive defense there. Instead, they're throwing men into these areas that they're never going to be able to hold on to and that they're going to lose. It's a PR disaster waiting to happen.
Once the Ukrainian army retreats from Donetsk, especially, and you know, and Zaporozhye as well, let's say, you know, there's very little justification for continuing the war because the Russian aims are to, you know, stated aims are, you know, what they want, their conditions are all of Lugansk and Donetsk and Zaporozhye and Kherson. And if the Russians take all of that, then and the Ukrainians have got no way of getting it back, you know.
Yeah.
And people are going to, in Ukraine and in Western Europe, are going to start saying, you know, why are we fighting this war? Because we've already lost the thing that we're trying to stop the Russians from getting, you know. And if it goes on, they might take something else. They might take Kharkov, or they might take, you know, whatever. Or
but they seem happy to do that, James.
They've put a huge amount of troops in Donetsk to stop that from happening.
They did,
but things could go wrong, and they could be forced out of there because they can't protect their rear, and then, you know, and that's going to be a problem. Getting them all out of there without losing half their equipment or remaining equipment or whatever, and taking a lot of casualties. But that's the corner they've painted themselves into. But if they lose those places, then Zelensky can't say, "Well, we're not going to. What we're not going to do now." You know, what terms, what of the Russian peace terms are you not going to agree to since they've already taken most of it? You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then he's got to, you know.
Let's ask Louis Bastos. Louis Bastos, you've been waiting.
Sorry, good evening, good morning. If I was a smart general, you just showed me the blue line and the green line where they could hold the base. If I was a general or a leader in the command, I'd bring all the troops and reinforce the green-blue line between the green in Ukraine and the blue line where the Russians are coming, and create a massive defense there with all the weapons they have and all the help from NATO. But if they're going to be sending people to the red lines, they're not going to have anything to defend when the Russians get to the green side.
No, exactly. My thought would have been you make a stand: Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kavoy Rog, Dnipro, Poltava.
Exactly.
You know that, and rounding up, and then of course you can link that because you've got to protect Kiev as well. So you've got natural borders there, and I would have thought that would have been the ideal place for you to. And then of course the area around here, the reserve, is not going to be easy to get through. But I think you're absolutely right. James, I mean, there is an utter sort of, how can I put it, a sort of collective madness to keep throwing people at these areas which are not going to survive.
Yeah, but they're doing it for. I mean, there's a political objective rather than a military objective. I mean, the political objective is, say, keeping Zelensky in power and people around him, or it's getting more support from, persuading NATO countries to give them more support and keep the thing going. If the war ends, there has to be an election, and the worse things go, the more likely it is that Zelensky is not going to be re-elected and his party is going to be out, is going to be rather small in parliament and things like that. But there's also there are people in the government who, or who are working for organs of the state, who the Russians are saying, will have to go. They haven't named a lot of names or any names really, but they talk about denazification. So a lot of those people are going to have to go. So they're going to lose their well-paid jobs.
Yeah.
And then where are they going to go? They might have to leave the country. It might be that they start getting prosecuted.
Yeah, exactly that. I would have to say that some of the stupidity that we're hearing from people and some of the stuff that they're coming out with just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, there are so many. I mean, look at this. I mean, this is the Daily Express. How are we meant to believe anything the mainstream media say, James Tweedy, when they come out with absolute tosh like this?
Well, the Express is a bit of a. It's always been a bit like that. Well, it has been for years, but
rag.
But it's the same with the Times or the Telegraph, and before they would definitely have a political spin on things, but they wouldn't be reporting stuff that they couldn't back up.
Yes.
But now they're reporting not rubbish, like just total propaganda that's been made up by somebody, that's just been invented by somebody, and they don't care. But the readers, I don't know, I suppose their readers want to read that sort of thing.
Yeah, it does seem very, very, very strange, doesn't it? Certainly seems strange to me, but there we go. As I say, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, they're really they're undermining their own standards. So why do they think they can get away with it? Their own credibility. They're undermining their own credibility, and it's possibly because they think that people hate Russians so much in Britain and in other countries that they want to read that sort of stuff, and they don't care that it isn't true. The people who read it probably know it's not true, but they don't care. They just want to read it.
Yeah, exactly that. What I suppose. I mean, this is indicative, isn't it? This is the Ukrainian national anthem in a school. It's going to be lights out for Ukraine soon if they don't agree to a peace deal, is it, James?
Yeah, but they've they've brought that on themselves. It's another thing. They've really stepped up the drone attacks on Russia since Trump started to get serious about peace.
Yeah.
About negotiating a peace deal. And you may say he's not really serious. He's just trying to save face. He's just trying to preserve Ukraine as some kind of threat to Russia or whatever. But they've really stepped them up. It's it's a political thing. It's not a military. It's not a military operation. It's a political operation. It's a propaganda operation. But they're attacking things like power stations and oil refineries, and now they're attacking oil tankers at sea. And the Russians are striking back in kind, and no one's backing down. No one's trying to de-escalate it, and it's just going to go on and on. And yeah, there won't be any electricity, or there'll only be intermittent electricity in Ukrainian cities fairly soon. So they brought that on themselves.
So we've got two more things to talk about with Ukraine. Three more things to talk about. Sorry, two more. I was right first time. Two more things to talk about with Ukraine before we move on with the second half of the show. first of all, shall we say we've got this. It almost seems that's the best way to bring down a drone at the moment. And of course, Russia are able to put far more drones in the air. This is a soldier's worst nightmare, James, to be honest with you. This, if Russia are getting more advanced, better drones, that was a Russian shooting down a Ukrainian drone, by the way, and you can't keep up with the amount that the Russians have got. The There's only one way this is going, and surely everybody's got to see that, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean that was a good shot, by the way. I think you only
Yeah.
fired a couple of shots and you hit it, and it's a small little thing that's moving in the air. But yeah, you see like a lot of soldiers carrying shotguns to shoot them down, because a lot of those drones are small things like this,
Yes.
and a shotgun probably will bring it down. And that's going to become like standard equipment. Like one guy in every infantry squad is going to have a shotgun,
Yes.
And then the other thing that they're going to have is some kind of portable backpack size drone jammer to try and interfere with them. All these sort of things, maybe a little tiny radar that's on a backpack or something like that. That's all of these things are going to have to become standard, and some of them are going to be quite expensive, I think. But
okay,
yeah.
Let's move on to this then, James. The Mad Doctor's been at it again. This is a political commentator, I use the word advisedly, called Gilbert Doctorow. He is saying that Putin's war is inhumane. The war of attrition is inhumane, and Putin's terrible for doing this. I've got news for you, Gilbert. All wars are inhumane. They knew this going in, though, James Tweedy, what this would turn into.
Well, Gilbert Doctorow he's someone who speaks Russian, and he worked out in Russia representing Western companies for a long time, and he's actually been one of the sane voices on all this, But a lot of the different commentators who are against the war, let's say, and against trying to isolate Russia, which includes him, they do disagree with each other, and they get into little fights and stuff. So I don't know. I haven't read what he's said. I'll go and check his blog out. But I wouldn't put him down, Gilbert Doctorow. I think he knows some of what he's talking about. But he gets into a lot of. He's got a feud with another elderly journalist who's an Australian who lives in Moscow called John Helmer. And John Helmer appears on some of these kind of YouTube channels and things as well. The famous, they were both on the Duran with Alex Mercouris and Alexander,
the two Alexes,
Alex Christoforou, and they really went after each other on that. It was quite entertaining.
But I get the thing from watching Doctorow, and I know him a little bit because I spoke to him on a couple of occasions. But he seems to go looking for this sort of thing.
Okay, I don't know. The criticism I've heard of him is that he gets too much of his information from watching Russian TV, like sort of talking head programs. That's the thing that people say, that he gets all his.
Although I'll give him his heads up.
He's not based in Russia. He lives in Belgium.
Yeah, I will give him his heads up here. When we were the only ones, apart from Gilbert, who saw, I don't know whether he saw our program, who the very first time Russia struck a NATO bunker back in 2023, I will give him his props. He was the only other person apart from us that we saw reporting on it and saying, look, this has happened. So I will give him his props on that. One last thing before we send you off for a quick break. I've been asked, we may have seen that wonderful, I don't know whether you've seen it, James, the pit bull that saved his master from being thrown onto the front line by the TCC, by ragging the TCC officers quite badly. People have asked, did the dog survive? Yes, and he's being treated. They tried to conscript the owner, James Tweedy, and the dog decided to take very large bites out of them.
Okay. Yes. Well, probably shouldn't try it with someone who's walking their dog, then, should you? Because a lot of dogs aren't. Dogs are very loyal, aren't they?
They are. They are. And it did seem very funny at the time. And as you may not have seen it, and of course it is absolutely hilarious. I think we can have it one more time. It's only about a minute and a half. Have a look at this. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of chaps, James. Thank you very much for watching the first half of the show. We're going to get into some videos we can't show on normal mainstream. And of course, we'll be putting those on straight after this.